What's going on YouTube? Welcome to another Fantasy Puck video. It's Chris, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys our final trades target video. Before we get started though, let me know in the comments down below, are you a buyer or a seller at the deadline? I want to know. The fantasy hockey trade deadline is, the default one I believe is on the 22nd. You can go ahead and change that in your league settings, and most of you guys probably did that. I personally, if ever I run a league, I like to kind of move it till after the NHL trade deadline. But Yahoo's weird where it can only set certain dates for it. I don't know what ESPN is like. I'm not in an ESPN league this year, so hopefully you guys can manually set that. But most of them are this week, guys. So be sure that you're in Discord for a couple reasons. Number one, we have the entire fantasy hockey playoff schedule available to you guys. It outlines all the key matchup. It outlines back-to-backs. It outlines goalie, streamer options. Everything that you need is going to be available to you in Discord. So be sure that you join that. The link will be in the description down below. As well as, guys, if you're interested in signing up for Prize Picks, be sure that you use code PUCK. It really helps us out with future sponsorships and bring you guys good stuff that we're looking into for the summer. And it also allows you to claim up to $100 in your initial deposits as a bonus via Prize Picks. So be sure that you use code PUCK if you guys do decide to sign up for that. We have a lot of good options there for you as well. Speaking of good options, we have a ton of premium options available. There's never been a better time to sign up for our Patreon, guys. It's only like $5 a month. Definitely recommend doing that, especially if you need access to like our trade analyzer or our player projections for the rest of the season and you're in a league that has money involved and that you're trying to win out. Definitely recommend looking at our Patreon for more premium fantasy hockey options, and be sure that you're following us on Twitter as well, guys. Thank you for all the support lately. Let's get right into the video. All right, up first, Timo Meier. Now, the way that I've kind of structured this video is I want the big money, big impact players at the front. You'll probably see them as like high value players or high priced players in the video timeline there. These are the players that are going to give you the best chance of winning, but they're going to cost the most. And Timo Meier is a great example. 31 goals on the year, 255 shots already, 112 hits. He could just outright win you your league if he goes to a competitor, especially if it's the Devils, guys. It's likely that he's going to slot alongside Jack Hughes if he ends up in New Jersey, which sounds absolutely terrifying for anybody trying to match up against that. But in and of itself, like, Timo Meier is an elite shot volume and great hit volume, fantasy hockey player. 31 goals on the season already. Like, being in San Jose has not deterred him whatsoever. And I think if he goes to a contender, he's an absolute 100% keeper. The only caveat to this is that you're going to have to pay a lot. But in my opinion, it is 100% worth it. This guy would be an elite fantasy hockey player if he was on a contender, especially the Devils, guys, if he's lining up with Jack Hughes. So if you're paying up for a forward and you want to go all in for something, I recommend Timo Meier. Don't have his playoff schedule, obviously, because I'm not 100% sure where he's going yet. But I think, like, he's definitely worth paying up for, given the fact that he's just so elite in two peripheral categories. And then he also, on the power play, is a threat and has 31 goals on the season. And a good keeper option, like I said. Moving on to his counterpart, Erik Karlsson. Speaking of production, this guy has been absolutely absurd. Like, I don't know what happened in the offseason. Like, it just sounded like he was healthy. Like, he had an offseason where he was able to just get healthy and just, like, I don't know. Regardless of the fact he's been unbelievable with the Sharks this year, he has the highest upside for any defenseman the rest of the season if he goes to the Edmonton Oilers. Just the fact that he's been so good this year, and the fact that, like, he could go to the Oilers and play with McDavid and Draisaitl, like, that's just absurd. Point production continues to be great, even though he's on San Jose. Like, it's just been so consistent throughout the year that I'm not worried about him dropping off in any fashion if he goes to a different team. The only downside is really that he has average peripherals. 117 shots isn't a lot, but it's, like, good enough for me, I guess. Just, he doesn't hit. He doesn't really block as much either. And again, he's going to be a high price due to how good he's been this season. But again, safe bet for a keeper if he gets moved to the Oilers, due to the fact that he does still have a term on his contract. And I believe the Oilers would be keeping him if he ends up going there. Again, no fantasy hockey schedule. Don't know where he's going yet. He could actually end up staying put in San Jose. And even if that's the case, like I still think that's a good option. I probably wouldn't pay up for him if he ends up staying in San Jose. However, if he goes to Edmonton, like I'm all in on this guy. All right, now on to somebody that just has been super consistent throughout the entire year. Doesn't really pertain too much to like potential or upside by any means. He's just a very, very safe pick. Very, very good goaltender. Alexander Georgiev came over from the Rangers at the beginning of the season. Was kind of in question of how he was going to do. He's been unbelievable for the Avs this year. Again, it's going to be a high price, but 100% worth it in my opinion. 9-17 on the year, 23 wins. The absolute starting goaltender for the Avs. Francouz has been out with like an injury as of lately too. 9th in the NHL in expected in goals saved above expected, excuse me. And he has an incredibly good playoff schedule. You guys can take a look right there. I'm highlighting weeks 23 through 25 because that's essentially when most people's playoffs begin and end. But in our Discord, we do have weeks 22 and 21 outlined for you as well. So be sure to check that out. Again, the Discord link is in the description. He's been great all season, and the Avs are starting to get healthy. So I think that, he's a good option going forward. If you guys need to pay up for a goalie, if your goaltending's been struggling this season, if you count a lot of categories for goaltenders, Georgiev is 100% worth trying to get if you're trying to win out this year. This will come into question probably from a lot of you, but I wanted to include this again just because of how much of a reward it could get. Let me preface something by saying really quickly, this is the highest risk player that you could target, I think, in fantasy hockey. It's such a question mark that like the Avs might just hold out Gabe for the entire rest of the season. There have been reports that he's skating with the team. There have been reports that he's skating with the team this week. But again, like you just never know, especially with the fact that he's been held out the entire year to begin with. So it's very, very, very high risk for you guys, but he could be a huge X factor if you can get him on your team and if you can get him for cheap. Guys, make sure if you're targeting this player, do not give up a lot for him because, again, it's very, very possible that he just gets held out the rest of the season. But I think, if you're looking for that kind of X factor trade, if you're looking to kind of like potentially, like say, for example, you're in an 8 or 7 spot, like anywhere towards the bottom, like just barely squeaking into fantasy hockey playoffs, you need an X factor on your team. Gabe is an unbelievable option. He's going to hit you with 6 or 7 different categories, depending on your league settings. Center, left wing, like he could even slot in at center on the second line and grab you a ton of faceoffs as well too. Just, guys, be very, very cautious with this trade. Again, the only reason why I have him here is because of the upside. I think he could be an absolutely huge X factor if he ends up skating with the Avs. Just, again, given the fact that their fantasy hockey playoff schedule is so easy, could be a huge piece of your team. But just be very, very cautious that it's very much a possibility that they just hold him out. So trade for at your own risk. Moving on to defensemen. Our kind of mid-tier defenseman that we have here is Moritz Seider. I know a ton of you were on him at the beginning of the year, myself included. I thought this guy was going to continue to be an absolute stud. His production has not been great at all this season, but his peripherals have been unbelievable since the All-Star break, guys. One of the better hit and block combo guys in the NHL, still chipping in those shots as well. Still power play 1 and first pair. He's had 9 points in his last 10 games. A great playoff schedule. He's got 11 games on the slate there. You can look just right down below. And he's a hit and block machine. So, his price shouldn't be as high as what it was at the beginning of the season. And you should be able to snag him for a lot cheaper than, like I said, what his value was at the beginning of the year. And just given the fact that he's been so good in terms of his hits and blocks, I was going to put Jacob Trouba here, but honestly, I think Moritz Seider just has more upside given the fact that he's a power play 1 defenseman and Trouba is not. Trouba is not listed on any power play in New York right now. So I think Seider is honestly a better bet and should cost you less, just, given the fact that, like, go look at, if you're on Yahoo, go look at the last 30 days, look at how good he's been in that time. If you count hits, you count blocks, this guy's an absolute stud. If you need a peripherals defenseman, absolute stud, still has power play 1 upside. Like, there's nothing wrong with trying to acquire this guy. I don't think he's going to hurt you at all. in terms of like his production or anything like that. Like maybe plus minus isn't the best, obviously, but you know, Detroit's been better and they're pushing for a playoff spot right now. So I would definitely recommend looking into Moritz Seider. And then our mid-tier goalie is Jeremy Swayman. And the split has been a lot closer to 50-50 since January, guys. If you go and look at the history, like Swayman's been playing a lot recently, a lot, like just as much, if not slightly less than Ullmark. And then the great thing about Boston is they have one back-to-back in every single week of the playoffs. So you know you're at least getting him for one start. And if you look at some of the matchups here and you go to our schedule in Discord, you'll see that like because he's on Boston, he just has so much upside. Like great playoff schedule, and people already know that Ullmark is the starter, so like you're really not having to trade for a starting goaltender. Like he's pretty much like a 1B at this point, so you shouldn't have to give up a lot for him. Like I'd say like a mid-round pick would be a good value for him if you can get him anywhere around like maybe let's say like the 5th or 6th. Like say you have a 6th or 7th, like that's 100% worth it for a playoff push in my opinion if you need a goaltender. He is my number one target for goaltenders. Georgiev obviously is much better and a lot safer just in terms of the fact that he gets a lot of starts. But I think just bang for buck value-wise, I think Swayman's the number one option for you guys for fantasy hockey playoffs. Look at some of the matchups they get. Like obviously there's some tough ones like Tampa Bay, Carolina, Toronto, Devils. But I think like you expect Ullmark to get the majority of those matchups. And if you get Swayman against Ottawa or Montreal, or even St. Louis, Columbus, Nashville at this point, like even Pittsburgh and Philly, like all of those are great matchups. And you're guaranteed to get them at least in a back-to-back every single week during fantasy hockey playoffs. So just because of that, like he's my favorite goaltender target for fantasy hockey playoffs. All right, moving on to some of the lower tier guys now that shouldn't cost you as much. Jake DeBrusk has been unbelievable on the Bruins. Like just line one, power play one exposure. They have the check line together now too with Zacha, Krejci, and Pasta. So you get DeBrusk on a line with Bergeron and Marchand. His shot volume's been great. He's been hitting. And he's got, again, a great playoff schedule, and you shouldn't have to pay too much to get him. He's kind of like a depth forward for your team at this point. But if you need points, shots, and power play points, he's a great option. He's line one, power play one, like just a really, really, really good value option. And he's been hot since coming back of his injury. Definitely recommend Jake DeBrusk if you guys need some more depth scoring and shot volume. I have Bowen Byram here, and I'll talk about Sammy Girard in a bit. Mike was more of a caveat of Girard, and I have Bowen Byram here just because of how good he's been when he's been healthy. And that's like the key thing. 6 points in his last 7 games. He's seeing 20 to 24 minutes a night. Obviously, that's Makar. With Makar being out, they've kind of slotted Devin Taves to the right side, and they've allowed Girard and Byram to like move up in the lineup. Incredibly good playoff schedule. Again, should be very, very easy to acquire, just given this like small sample. And if he gets moved down the lineup, just look to pick up Sammy Girard or look to acquire Sammy Girard. He's 23% owned. Again, should be relatively easy to snag up for cheap. And again, I like Byram a little bit more than Girard just because he's a little bit more consistent with his peripheral stats. I know Girard tends to produce more in terms of like the assist category, but I like Byram's peripheral stats just slightly better than what Girard's been. And then finally, our last kind of goaltender that we want that should be relatively cheap is Jack Campbell and Stuart Skinner. I split both of them there. I want to give you guys the option because I know it's been heads or tails with Jack, even though he's been really good as of late. And Stuart Skinner's kind of started to drop off a little bit as well too. So it's really up to you guys, and it really depends on availability. I think if you can get one, it's a really, really good option, just given the fact that it's likely that the Oilers add somebody at the deadline to make them even better. And the fact that along with that, like they've just been hot as of late too. Evander Kane's come back. They've been absolutely rolling teams, but it's been a big shift in terms of starts for Campbell. He's been a lot better. I know his last couple games weren't great, obviously, but it is looking like it's more of a 50-50 split now, where before Skinner was getting the majority of the starts. And like I said, just get whichever's available. They have a fantastic playoff schedule, as you can see there, with multiple easy matchups every week. You get San Jose, Arizona the first week. You get Arizona, Anaheim the second week, and then Anaheim, San Jose in the third week, guys. So those are my recommendations for trade targets. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I know the Gabe one's, again, super high risk, but I think, you know, if you need an X factor on your team, you can get them for cheap. I definitely think that that's a great option. You can kind of, you know, explain that to whoever you're trying to trade with, that, like, you know, he's such a big risk, you might not even play, and that you're just willing to take that risk. But again, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Let me know if you guys are buying or selling at the deadline. Appreciate all the support lately, guys. We got a lot more videos coming out, especially with kind of fantasy hockey playoffs right around the corner. We're going to highlight all of the key matchups for you guys and the best streamer options and everything that you guys need to win your fantasy hockey leagues. It's big crunch time now, guys. So be sure that you're staying tuned to the channel and hit that subscribe button and that like button. Thank you guys so much for your time today. I will see you guys in the next video. Have yourselves a fantastic rest of the day.